Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Motorola Solutions. So we are excited to be, to be the first one to be presenting at Wireless Field Day 4. So first of all, a big thanks to Stephen for allowing us to participate in the event.
Stephen's great! Yay, Stephen! Somebody's got to say it.
So. We are all excited to be part of this event, right? From the moment we know we are going to participate, there's been a lot of buzz within the team. Everyone was excited to be part of the event, and we were really looking forward to it, and here we are, right? So before we get started, a quick run through the agenda. I'll get Cherie Martin talk about, give an overview of Motorola Solutions for about 20 minutes. Then we will dive deep into the Wing-Fi architecture. For like about an hour. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Q&A in that session. And then Vic is going to talk about some of the cool tools that we have in the Wing-Fi architecture. Talk about our auto AP provisioning and troubleshooting. So Cherie, it's all to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm Cherie Martin. I lead field support and enablement for the Americas. And I am going to spend the next 20 minutes just giving you an overview of Motorola Wireless LAN Solutions at a very high level and who we are and where we focus in our vertical markets. So Motorola has been in the wireless business since the inception of the company in various forms, right? Motorola as an early company started in instruments, scientific instruments and so forth, and went into the radio business, both on the two-way side and eventually, after acquiring Simple Technologies, into the wireless LAN space and all of the enterprise solutions that come with that. And so if you look here on the left-hand side of the slide, you can just see a smattering of some of the product segments or the product technologies that we bring to market in a fully integrated solution. From the enterprise side, we focus on the mobile computers and the scanners that go into some of the more industrial areas. We have the two-way radios that serve public safety and government, as well as education facilities and other markets. We also have had a long history in voice over Wi-Fi, having been one of the first companies to bring voice over Wi-Fi handsets to market and the evolutions thereof. And of course, all the wireless technologies that you'll be focusing on today. Wireless security and troubleshooting and networking, and specifically our Wing operating system, which we built from the ground up for mobility and for high performance networking and computing. As a company, we have had a very, very long history of innovation in wireless. And as we have grown our technology base, we've spent a lot of focus on really getting those technologies to work together and bringing full solutions to market. Not just a point solution for a particular pain point a customer has, but really looking at a broader spectrum. And as you can see, our portfolio has been really brought together to bring those solutions to the market as a whole solution. Whoops. Sorry about that. And here's some of the, just looking on the left-hand side of this slide, who are those customers that we're solving this or bringing those solutions to market for? We have customers in every single one of these market segments, some very large, significant customers in transportation, manufacturing, of course, government, having a very long history there, hospitality, healthcare, education, and certainly retail and the supply chain logistics coming from the Simple Technology side. So those products that I featured on the first slide really have been brought together to make full product complements for each of these vertical markets. Looking at the evolution of wireless LAN, Motorola, through Simple Technologies, was the first company to bring an enterprise class access point to market. And it's because our vertical markets that we were focusing on at that time were demanding it. It was very niche areas where wireless mobility was critical for worker productivity. And so when we first brought it to market, you can see the feature set of those independent access points were really robust. All the intelligence was at the edge. But from an IT management's perspective, it wasn't scalable, right? You had to manage them on a one-to-one basis. And that became very cumbersome as the size of the network grew. We also noticed that, for convenience, they were only put in areas where there was a business justification. So mobility across an enterprise really wasn't there yet. As the speeds and feeds grow, and as we saw the evolution of wireless LAN, one thing we noticed, every time the technology got faster, more applications entered the space, and then more devices were brought into that business environment to take care of, or to take advantage of that additional functionality from those applications. And so therefore, what happens? More traffic on the network and more demand for network, for wireless access. So when we got to ABG, Motorola stepped back and said, well, the manageability for an IP perspective really wasn't there, managing those access points on a one-to-one basis. So we brought to market and introduced the first centralized management platform for wireless LAN management. And I believe that we got the wireless industry network world best of show or something like that year for introducing this product category. And a lot of times you'll hear the term hub and spoke, where that centralized point of management really became the brain trust. All of the traffic was forwarded back to that central point of management, and it was all the policies were applied there, and all of the quality of service and so forth, and the traffic routing was taken care of at that central point of management. However, that brought a single point of failure and a throttle or a bottleneck to that modality. So as 802.11n entered the market, speeds and feeds got faster, more applications, more devices, more tax on the wireless LAN. We realized that throttling all that traffic back to a single point of failure was going to basically create a choke point, especially as the traffic requirements on the wired side got much larger. So we stepped back again and created the Wing 5 or the architecture that you're going to hear about today. And what we did was we brought the best of both worlds of those technologies together. The thick access points at the edge, being able to apply traffic or the quality of service policies and the security at the edge, being able to forward traffic locally without having to bring it back to a central location, but also maintaining that central point of management that you had when we had the spoken hub, right? And so you really get the best of both worlds. It optimizes your LAN from a utilization perspective. It removes that bottleneck and that single point of failure. And you also have the security at the edge and the quality of service policies at the edge. And what that does for your applications is actually cut down on the latency for all that traffic going back and forth to the network. You can see in this slide, this is just a visual depiction of taking that controller out of being the bottleneck in the network. You can see the flow of traffic between devices along the blue line between the mobile handhelds, as well as on the gray line between the application server and that laptop. In previous versions of our architecture and the industry as a whole, you can see it all goes to the wireless LAN controller in the back out, where today with the Wing 5 platform, you remove all that latency, and that's where you get the quality of service uplift by removing that controller from being the bottleneck. A closer look to the services at the edge, all those quality of service policies and features that we talk about. You'll hear us say services at the edge or intelligence at the edge as the as the presentations continue on this afternoon. What are we talking about? There's 4 categories. There's security, from the firewall and IDS properties, to performance, that's quality of service, that's up to layer 3 roaming, and some of your advanced features like Smart RF, which is RF mitigation and interference management and load balancing, the survivability, which is for remote sites, DHCP and AAA server, and as well as management, the locally managed firmware updates and so forth, as well as troubleshooting capabilities, all exist at every point in the network. And I think as you hear today, I think the one thing that I'd like you to walk away with from Wing operating system, which separates us, is that we have a single operating system for every network element. Our controllers and our access points alike run the same software. So you have the same features and the same power at every point in the network. And you can make those decisions accordingly because the feature sets are there. Just a quick view at the products that we're talking about when we talk about the entire portfolio and all the network elements. We have basically 3 separate categories for products in our portfolio. Access points, what we call traditional RF controllers or wireless LAN controllers, as well as the integrated application servers. So we'll start here with the access points. All of our access points have the same feature set, regardless of whether they're dependent or independent. The only difference is whether or not you put them independently, whether they'll stand on their own or continue to work if that link between the controller and the access point goes down. The guys will probably talk about the architecture and how scalable it is. We have different topologies that you can put in place, and it's very flexible depending on the needs of the environment. And that's why we have 2 sets of products in our portfolio, both dependent and independent. Our RF controllers are wireless LAN controllers. We have 3 different models for small deployments all the way up to large deployments of 1,000 access points. And then we also have our NOC-based and branch-based integrated services platforms. And those at a baseline are RF controllers, so they have the wireless LAN architecture, so Wing 5 runs natively on those. But also on top of that, you have a hypervisor where you can install additional applications that will run on that same platform. And so from our branch office platforms, they come standard with some voice features that are developed by Motorola and support our wireless voice over IP handset lines. On our NX9500 series, that is a NOC-based controller. And that controller not only will run the Wing operating system, but it will also run some advanced feature sets like network assurance and security and other types of applications. So you can see, as we split these 2 types of appliances up, the branch versus the NOC, there are certain services that you may want to have distributed at a local level, and then there's others that are best run at a NOC level, and that's how we're looking at those 2 platforms from a functionality standpoint. So I think that pretty much gives a high-level overview of how we approach the market, how we view the market and our evolution, our commitment to continuing to evolve this product line, and we're very committed to that, and also the breadth of our portfolio. Yes?
If I need to do a deployment with 100 APs, am I locked into having to go with the RFS 6000 and have 256 APs as the max, so I'm buying space that I'm probably never going to use?
That's a good question. Those controllers are not fully licensed when you buy them. You buy only the licenses that you need for the amount of access points that you have.
So that's the max.
That's the max. You can buy a 0 port and just add until, as you expand. So we really have structured it for a cost-effective model. Our redundancy also, if you wanted to have redundancy, you don't have to license that second server either. They share the licenses that you buy, just the hardware cost. Yeah.
So Cherie, that's an important point, right? Is that we don't charge you in a redundant environment for extra licenses. So that licenses is shared within our clustering architecture
Yep.
for availability.
You mentioned with the new architecture, you no longer have bottlenecks because of controller. So we still have controllers. So what exactly do they do?
Okay, so we have our independent access points you can put in a remote facility with no controllers up to 64. And the reason there's a 64 limit is because one of those access points is what we call an RF domain manager, or what you could consider it a site supervisor, right? It controls all of the communication within that RF domain of access points. So all your management statistics that may need to be sent up to the core, all of the firmware updates that needed to be passed around, one access point controls all that. And so it also has its normal duties of serving clients. And so once you get up to that 64 number, above and beyond that, it starts to, the access point it runs out of memory. So above 64, you would put local controllers in. And then to manage it as an overall network, you would use a NOC-based appliance, because you can do that hierarchical management going forward. Yeah.
Pretty well in a little bit.
Yep. Yes.
Going back to the licensing of controllers, which features are included in the controller? Which features do I need to buy a license for?
All of our Wing operating system is fully comprehensive of all the features that we talk about, and on that, all the features at the edge. We do have some additional licensable features, primarily role-based firewall. So if you wanted to do role-based firewall where you're attaching a firewall policy per the role of the user, that can be licensed above and beyond. But outside of that, and I can't think of any others that, I think everything else. Oh, advanced WIPs, right? So Motorola has a platform called Air Defense, which is a very comprehensive platform, some of which the features will run on the 9500, but it does WIPs reporting and so forth. And then you have basic IDS features. We do have a license that you can buy that will sort of step you somewhere in between, that will give you additional alerts and events. It will also do rogue mitigation, as well as detection and also mitigation.
So even the role-based firewall, the native WinFi OS already has the L2, L3 stateful firewall embedded on it, right? So if you didn't buy the role-based firewall license, you would still get the L2, L3 firewall.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So the license just gives you the ability to assign roles to different users based on different parameters.
And am I buying those licenses as a license for the controller, or do
For
I
the-
license all the APs?
For the controller.
For the controller.
So even features like IPsec, VPN tunnelling, things like that, it's built in, it's free. We get that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
It's part of the base cost of the
Yeah.
controller. So we're not gonna, if you wanna add IPsec, we're not gonna charge you a per seat license for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say by and large, most of our customers buy our base set of features, and that meets all their needs. The advanced, the role-based firewall is, I think, the one that is the most popular for customers that want to apply roles. Yes, Kevin?
And on the lower end platform, the RFS 4000, we give you that for free.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And some of these, as we've gone forward, I did say 64. Some of these controllers will get additional capacity. This RFS 4000 is actually going to be bumped up in the next release to 72 access points. Yeah.
I think from the top end limit, the NX9500, we're over 10,000.
Yeah, it's 10,240 for the NX9500. Now, when you're running additional services on it, it really depends on how much, how much you're taxing that top end. But from an access point management perspective, if you're strictly looking at that, it's 10,240 on the NX9500. Yes.
And when that says multi-vendor management, is that just management through SNMP, or how, in which?
It does SNMP.
It does SNMP.
So the NX series controller, that will also run the Air Defense software. as a VM. So that's going to be integrated as part of the NX 9000 platform, right? So when you start putting in ADSP, you also get the WISP as well as the multi-vendor management as part of the air defense feature set itself.
Yeah.
So the 9500 is a controller, it's not a wireless NMS.
Um,
Sounds like it combines both features if it manages other vendors' APs.
Yeah, so it runs Wing 5 on it. It runs Wing 5 on it. So there's like, there's like a fundamental difference between a management platform versus a controller, right? So the controller would typically have very, they'll talk to AP in a proprietary manner, like how Cisco does with CapWap. So we have our own protocol that we use to communicate between the controller and the access point, right? They're going to exchange more statistics. The controller is going to know about the state of the AP much more than a typical management platform, right? The NX 9500 runs Wing 5, so it's got that close control platform or control relationship with the access points. It's not just a pure management platform. Yeah. So if you chose to deploy architecture where you want to tunnel all the traffic back to the controller, you could do that with the NX 9500.
That would be Motorola APs, obviously.
It'll be the protocol between the controller and AP will be Motorola proprietary.
And so for the multi-vendor, that's management of other vendors' APs.
Yeah, that's going to be over SNMP. Yeah, correct.
Yep.
The multi-vendor. Yeah. So the NX 9500, it's going to run Wing 5 as a separate. Assume that it's a separate VM, and then it's going to run ADSP as a separate VM. So the Wing 5 is going to do all your AP management. You will configure your wireless network through the Wing 5 UI, and then the ADSP will be another inbuilt software on it where you would do all your webs, and then if you want to do multi-vendor management, you would use that to do it.
Does air defense run as an actual module like that on the sort of virtual machine almost on the 9500?
The air defense platform, yes, it's running as a software on the NX 9500 platform.
And did I see on a previous slide that you've got your own authentication server?
Right.
AAA server
yes, AAA
sits
server.
on-
Yep.
Okay. And where does
So,
that live?
Okay, so one of the core unique thing about our Wing 5 architecture is we realized, as we came up from the old architecture, we realized that when we started deploying these large sites, large distributed sites, we found that there is inconsistency in terms of wireless service across these sites, right? So, typically what happens is your controller is at the NOC, at the data center, and then your wireless service at the headquarters is pretty great, right? But at the branch, right, if you don't have a controller, then you lose a lot of these services, right? Then the question of, what do I lose if my controller is down or my WAN link is down, starts arising, right? So then what we did with Wing 5 is, that was kind of the fundamental in terms of defining how we want to design Wing 5. So we ensure that with Wing 5, we ensure that every network, wireless product of Motorola runs the same operating system, right? So if I today logged on to an AP and to a controller, I would see the same CLI, the same set of services. So, then what that means is at a site, if you don't have a controller, you could actually run a AAA server on one of the APs and, do PIP-MHRV to configure your, captive portal, DHCP server. So we try to push everything right to the edge.
So to answer your question, we could run that radius server on any device from the NOC all the way out to the edge.
Yeah.
And just to add something quick, right? The word Wing stands for Wireless Next Generation. That is the name of our operating system. We started off with having this one OS for all platforms. Back in the day, we had different types of controllers, ran a different platform. Everything was very different in terms of the OS itself. So with Wing, we standardized the OS. So if I have a build, it's going to run on all our controllers. That's how it started Wing 4.x. When we came to 5.x, we said we're going to take this controller code and port it over to the AP. And that's why we say services at the edge, because you're actually running the controller code on the AP. So the only limitation now is how big is the controller or how big is the AP. So some APs are lower end in terms of memory, in terms of CPU, versus higher end APs versus a controller, which is much more larger. So we have the RFS 4K, which is a controller, but has integrated antennas. It has integrated APs in there, 2 radios. So now it becomes a big fat AP. But all the core services run exactly the same way. So So there's no inconsistency. If you configure something on one site, it gets propagated across the entire network. And that's the whole concept of taking it to 9500. So what's the difference between a controller and 9500? The controller was designed specifically for packet switching. It can switch 4 gigs of packet, very easily. But when it comes to trying to, manage 10,000 APs, it becomes difficult because you need that kind of memory to kind of pull those stats to show those fancy graphs that we have in the UI. That's why we took it to 9500, which is nothing but the Wing 5 OS running on a much beefier machine, like 40 gigs of RAM. It's got lots of CPU, it's a Xeon CPU built in. And we have one more model, 9510, which is going to be with a integrated switching platform, if you will. And that could even switch packets if you need to. But it's kind of designed to be in the NOC and kind of manage multiple sites. So just to add a quick background on the OS itself.
Sure.
If you have all of the controller software in AP, why do you physically need a hardware controller?
Okay, so we will, I'm going to get on that slide in a bit.
I will hold that question then.
Sure, yeah. I will, that's coming up in the
I
slide.
actually have a little bit more of a question. I know that with the older architecture where you had air defense, they had dedicated sensors for running, which had a version of the air defense code on that. Has that code been integrated into the Wing 5 architecture?
Yes, now it is. So,
Yes.
so essentially what you could do is, that's another unique thing about us is, you could have a dual radio AP. Except for one AP, all the APs have band unlocked radios on them, right? So I can, any radio can either be 2.4 or 5, right? So what you could do is, you could put in an AP, dedicate one radio for like client access, and then the second radio could be a sensor. So on the same AP, I have like a full-blown sensor, and the other radio serving clients. And we also have a tri radio AP. There's a tri radio 7131 model where one radio could do 2.4 client access, the second radio is doing 5 gig client access, and the third radio is actually acting as a sensor. So you kind of get away from having the need to deploy a dedicated sensor.
I know with the initial release in the 7131 with those 3 radios that it was a little bit limited in having the sensor in the radio.
Yeah.
Have you overcome that so it can be a
Yes.
full-time sensor now?
It is, yeah. So in the new products that we launched over last year, we upgraded the chipset, and that can do much more spectrum analysis. And yes, we have overcome that limitation yet.
Yep.
And that's still the custom dedicated chip that's doing the sensor analysis, so it can't be used as a radio, right?
No, the radio itself can be used as both a sensor as well as client access.
Okay.
So I could have like say 5 APs in my enterprise, and then I could say 4 of those APs, both radios are doing client access, right?
Okay.
Same radio, same AP type, and then the 5th AP, I could say one radio is doing 5 gig or 2.4 depending on what you want, and then the other radio could be your sensor. Yeah. So that's kind of pretty unique to our architecture. I don't think I ever need the slides. I mean, this is.
Any other questions?
It's pretty
Okay.
great.
Well, I'm going to hand it back to you, and
All right,
you
cool.
guys can get into more detail.
I think
and,
I'm almost halfway through my slides, Vic. Awesome. So,
Actually, I did have another question. I know that some of your competitors are looking at integrating more of the WIPS functionality actually directly into the code that they're running on their controllers. Are you looking at moving in a similar sort of direction with that?
yes, we already have a lot of WIPS functionality just inbuilt into the controller itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have 2 modules. One is called the basic WIPS, which I think can do like 36 attack detection, and it can detect like the basic wireless attack threats, right? That's a basic module, and then we have an advanced WIPS module which is licensed, and that runs as part of the controller itself. Mm-hmm. And then if you wanted, of course, once you have the defense, that's kind of that has much more, that can do much more signatures. You can do much more rules and policy engine. But if you wanted a quick WIPS for your enterprise, we have it on the controller.
Now, I'm not really familiar with the Wing 5
Yeah.
architecture. I'm more familiar with the previous versions
Right.
of it. And it seemed to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the rule sets for the firewall rule sets at least were very ACL based.
Yep.
They didn't seem to me to be acting in a stateful firewall sort of way. And especially when you compare them with like wired
Yeah.
firewalls, the next generation ones especially, they're they're taking much more of a looking at the application type approach, looking at what an application is actually doing rather than just what port it's talking to.
Yep. So I'm going to address that as part of one of my slides.